When I got my hands on this free 335i, it was in pieces. Things were left loose and it needed a lot of work. And if you know anything about the N54 engine, they can be absolute animals, but they can also be really problematic. So far, we've made some good progress. We put the engine back together and we cleaned the back of the intake valves. She runs and drives surprisingly good, and she builds boosts sometimes, which brings us to today's video. My free BMW is not building boost. Let's see if we can fix it. Keep getting this turbocharger boost pressure too low, P0299. I've smoked the car, as you saw in my last episode, but we don't have any visible boost leaks. However, another fault that we have is this fuel low pressure sensor, P2541, and it's saying we have an electrical short circuit to ground. Now, I went through the test plan for this on ISTA, and it's telling me that I need to update the sensor and I need to update the line. But luckily, I was able to find an adapter kit online. It comes with a new fitting that goes onto the existing low pressure fuel rail. Comes with a new O-ring and the updated Bosch sensor that we need. That sensor is right down there underneath the throttle body. So let's get access, get this sensor swapped out, and see if that fixes our issue. Now, these cars are very sensitive with the fuel system. These have a high pressure fuel pump to increase pressure to the direct injectors that this BMW N54 has. Now, we already had an issue with the high pressure fuel sensor. Since we have a hard fault for that low pressure fuel sensor, it might be the reason as to why this car is going into boost deactivation, where it's actually not allowing the turbos to build boost. All right, let's start with picking off this charge pipe. Whoa, that thing launched. Aha, I found it. I think we can sneak this throttle body out. Okay, now we disconnect the fuel tank vent valve, our connector for the throttle body. It's not much, but now we have a little bit of access to that low pressure fuel sensor. Wires to the connector look okay. So here's our old brass Sensata sensor. Here's our new Bosch one. You can see the fittings are different, hence why we need that adapter. So let's get that installed. Here's our adapter. Here's the BMW part number. The repair instructions say you need to lightly oil this adapter, so I just put a small little touch of air tool oil on there. And then I had to install that O-ring. All right, calls for 20 Newton meters torque on this thing. See if I can sneak my torque wrench in there. I'm not gonna be able to torque this sensor though. Not without pulling the intake manifold, and I'm not doing that. That's tight enough. Got to be careful with a big 27 millimeter wrench. I mean, this thing has a lot of leverage, but that only needs 20 Newton meters. All right, that's all dialed in. Now, another thing I got is this 5-meter roll of Continental braided vacuum line. This vacuum line I bought at the store was too small. This is 2.5 mil. And I'm not a fan of this big blue silicone stuff, so we're going to rip this out and get it replaced. All right, we got all the silicone vacuum lines out of here. We're reconnected to the manifold. That goes back up to these two pipes. We can put the airbox back in and see how this thing runs. I'm curious. Next step, clear faults. Faults are cleared and low pressure fuel sensor code is gone. Let's fire this thing up and see what happens. Here we go. Nice. Really good. Come on, Sage, load up. Good girl. All right, let's take this thing for a drive, see what happens. I think she's gonna build boost. So this car's been running for like 10 minutes and that temperature gauge on the cluster is still bottomed out at 160 degrees for oil temp. I know you guys think I was running this thing cold last time, but it takes forever to get that oil temperature up. And it is oil temperature, it's not engine coolant temperature. Coolant temperature is not displayed on the gauge clusters on these N54s. Oh, she's gonna build boost. She's gonna build boost. I can feel it. All right. Oh, check engine light. And reduce power. It was feeling really good at low RPMs, but now I have an actual proper misfire. Wonder what's going on. I need to get those spark plugs out of there too. Ooh, this is like an actual misfire. Haven't had that yet. Wonder what the fault's gonna be. Just gotta keep chasing them. Fix the simple stuff first, keep moving. I wonder what happened. So for new faults, we got a turbocharger boost pressure too low, a fuel pump plausibility, and a misfire on cylinder number 3. Interesting. Let's run through the test plan for this boost pressure too low fault. Check following possible causes of faults: vacuum supply for the wastegate valve, the wastegate valves, the charged air duct, the turbochargers, the exhaust gas pressure is too high, or the cylinder head cover, valve cover, engine ventilation valve, which is the PCV valve in the back. I think they're just referring to vacuum leaks, which we smoked this thing last video and you guys saw. Check the vacuum to the wastegate valves for tightness, correct fit, and kinks. Check the charged air pipes and charged air hoses from the compressor to the throttle valve for leak tightness and correct fit. Check blow-off valve lines for leaking and proper seating. If necessary, carry out the functional check for the vacuum system. We're just going to say no fault was found because I haven't seen any yet. Saying check the vacuum pump. I checked vacuum there. Okay, now it's actuating the exhaust flap. So I think it uses that to build back pressure. I'm not sure. If you guys know, let me know in the comments. You can hear it's running the test on the exhaust flap activation. So now it's asking to remove the underbody panel, check the fitment of the intake pipes ahead of the exhaust turbocharger, so upstream, which are the intake pipes that we looked at last video and that blown out seal that we replaced. Now, I know that's not on the pressure side of the turbo, so it won't potentially fix our boost issue, but I do think that it is important that we did replace it. Now, one quick note about that last video. A lot of you guys were saying that that was the incorrect way to diagnose a boost leak, and fixing that pipe upstream of the turbochargers won't solve our boost issue. Now, I'm still learning. I've only worked professionally on BMWs in the shop for 6 years, and I never got my hands on that many N54s. I've done a lot of the gravy, bread and butter type work, oil pan gaskets, oil filter housings, valve covers, some turbo replacements, carbon removal, stuff like that. But as far as learning the intricacies of all of these systems on all of these different cars, I don't know everything. I'm not a master BMW technician, but I'm eager to learn and I'm willing to learn. So if you have some knowledge you want to share, I'd love to hear it. So now it's just telling me that the line between the two wastegate actuators must be disconnected, sealed, and made airtight. And here's an example of the specialty tool that they use. So I'm just going to use my Pepe's old vice grips. Lock those on there. Now let's see what happens. Start engine, run engine at idle speed. This thing is running like junk. I need to get new spark plugs stat. So now it's activating bank 1 wastegate. Observe the opening. If necessary, check the vacuum in the actuating wire of the pressure converter with a pressure gauge. I am really struggling to get eyes on that wastegate rod for bank 1. I just cannot see it. So I'm gonna pick the vacuum hose off for the bank 1 wastegate and stick a vacuum gauge on it and see what my reading is. 10 inches, 11 inches, or 275 millimeters of vacuum. So our set point for these wastegate actuators are 450 plus 50 hectopascals, so 400 to 500, and we're at 11 inches of mercury on my gauge, which puts us at about 375. So vacuum from the wastegate actuators out is actually a little bit low. So now we're gonna do the same, and we're gonna look for the same set point, see if we can get eyes on the wastegate actuator, which for the bank 2, we can actually see it. And on this rear one, we're reading about 12.5 inches of mercury. And according to my conversion, we are well within spec with that number. So that bank 1 may be an issue. Now I'm gonna plug that vacuum line back in and look for the wastegate. Yep, I just saw full movement of the wastegate. Okay, disconnected, reconnected. You can see that rod move. Now I'm gonna do this test one more time because when I did do it with those vice grips, I tore a hose in this vacuum line, so I need to get this replaced. Now before I go replacing this vacuum line and trying to clamp it down again, I just threw a vacuum cap on bank 2, and I have my vacuum tester hooked up to bank 1. So now we have no more leaks in that system, and both are sealed up tight. So I'll monitor bank 1, switch the test to bank 2, and then just switch these two. After I'm all done, I'll put a new piece of line in. I think that maybe that tear in the vacuum line had Bank 2 sealed up, but not bank 1. So I just want to make sure that my test results are the same this time around. It improved a little bit. No, it's pretty much still the same, 11 inches. So yep, that's holding. Oh, no, we're up again. Nice. We're up to almost 14, about 14 inches. So that's well within spec. All right, that's a good sign. And we're up to 14. All right, vacuum line has been repaired. Now it wants me to disassemble the exhaust so I can get access to the turbos. It wants me to pull the cap basically. All right, so before I go tearing into the exhaust on this thing, because I'm losing daylight, I really want to get a set of new plugs in here. So I'm gonna call up the local parts store, see if they got anything for me. AutoZone wants $25 per spark plug for some Bosch plugs. Isn't that insane? It's these Bosch ZGR6 STE2. It's the only thing got in stock. They want $25 per plug. There is no way I'm giving AutoZone that type of money. There's no way I'm paying them $150 for 6 plugs. Well, Napa's got some plugs for $20 per, but they need to order them from their other location. So honestly, I feel like spark plugs is a good way to go right now, because if these vehicles detect misfires, which it did feel like it was potentially a spark plug related misfire this time, then it could deactivate boost, although I did not have a boost deactivation fault. Also, another thing is those spark plugs that were in there, the previous owner told me they're like very, very cheap plugs, and they just threw them in to get them in. So I don't really trust them. We also have that fuel pump fault, and we have that boost pressure too low fault. So we're still making progress, but no big discoveries today. And I mean, check that out. A set of 6 from FCP Euro OE plugs, $55, saves me $100. Well, I got new spark plugs on the way because I do not trust these super light spark plugs, but I'm going to continue with the diagnosis. We have a fuel pump issue that we need to look into, and now a cylinder number 3 misfire. So my technique for diagnosing misfires on cars like this is I pull the ignition coil and the spark plug from the problem cylinder. So to rule out whether it's the ignition coil or the spark plug, I'll switch coils with 3 and 4, and I'll switch plugs with 2 and 3. Then I'll go drive it and see where the fault ends up moving to. Torque these down to 25 Newton meters. Now our spark plug is in cylinder number 2, and our ignition coil is in cylinder number 4. What's interesting that I didn't notice is we have a mixture control fault here for 2 lean. P0171, interesting. We did smoke it though, and that boot system was airtight. Now also what is interesting is this N54 does not have a mass airflow sensor. It has a manifold absolute pressure sensor. So if there is a leak from this intake pipe, for example, down to the bank 1 turbocharger, the computer is only going to see any differences through the intake manifold, through ambient temperature, and through pressure. So I'm not really sure how to go about the diagnosis on this one, but what I am going to do is I'm going to get the fault memory deleted out of here. Now another thing I should have done after I did the carbon cleaning is go here into service functions, powertrain, engine electronics, adjustment functions, delete adaptations. Now I usually go through this process on any BMW engine when I've done any intake work. If there was a torn intake boot, if I did carbon cleaning, if I repaired a leaking intake manifold, anything that has to do with potential lean codes and how the air and the fuel flows into the engine. And it just sort of gives it a nice clean slate. Sometimes it really does affect how the car runs. Now the last step is putting the car to sleep, so I get it all closed up, I lock it, and then I'm gonna let it sit for like 10-15 minutes, make sure it's all asleep. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but I was told when the light goes off on the shifter there, then the car is asleep. You gotta have all the doors shut, you gotta make sure it's locked, and you can't open any of the doors or else it's gonna wake the car up. So online things say from 3 to 16 minutes for this thing to go to sleep. It's been plenty of time. Let's load on up, Sage, and let's go for a ride. Come on. Good girl. So on this test drive, what we're looking for is resetting those mixture adaptations, if that did anything to help us, and also looking to see where that misfire goes, if it's gonna stay on number 3, if it's gonna move to number 4 or move to number 2. And another thing we're looking for is that fuel pump fault, and of course, boost pressure too low. I can tell you the car is running a lot more poor today than it was yesterday after we experienced that misfire on cylinder number 3, so it may be a hard misfire. I'm thinking maybe that spark plug failed because it is a pretty cheap spark plug to begin with. We also need a new CCC for this thing because it's just stuck on the loading screen. Hey, that's my buddy Jim. No misfire yet, no check engine light. Things pulling. I think maybe resetting mixture adaptations did something for us. I'm gonna hop off here at the next exit, do another hot lap down. This time I'm actually really gonna push it. Whoa, we're building boost, baby. Holy cow, that's 80. Wow, it built boost all the way. We have no check engine light. We have no reduced power malfunction. I did not lose boost on that pull. This thing is pulling strong. Well, that's really good news. I'm gonna keep hot lapping it, see if we can get it to fault. I like to do these little 1 mile double backs on the highway because you get good heavy pulls on the freeway on-ramps, and if anything goes south, you can jump off at the next on-ramp. You're less than a mile away from home. Better than doing some 6 mile straight highway road test. Jimbo texted me. Jimmy! All right, we got a nice clearing. Let's rip it. Grip it, rip it, and stick it. Holy cow, guys, this thing is hauling ass. Woo! Boy, she gets to 80 so quick. She's building boost, she's pulling. I don't hear any turbo wastegate rattle. I mean, everything's feeling kind of healthy right now. I'm just gonna keep doing this a couple times, see if we can get it to fault. I think the mixture adaptations and putting this thing to sleep really helped. Other than that, I still want to get spark plugs in it because I still don't trust these plugs. But we might not need turbos in this car. We really might not. But as of right now, she's pulling, she's driving. So to bypass the turbos for a little bit and focus on repairing other stuff would be really nice. She's pulling, guys. There's 80, quick. I still need to replace the oil pan because of that stripped out drain plug, and the gasket surface is just hemorrhaging oil. I have that slow leak at the radiator. I also have that potential leak at the trans cooler. I want to put more pressure into the system to get that properly diagnosed, but I do need to get those parts coming because if I'm going to put some miles down on this car, I'd like to have the oil pan done. I'd like to have the cooling system buttoned up tight. Cooling systems are always my #1 priority. I've said it before, I'll say it again, but you can top oil off. You can't top coolant off once an engine gets nuclear hot. And if you have a leak in the system, it prevents the system from holding pressure. All these radiator caps, expansion caps, they're all rated to a specific rating, right? 15, 16, 17 PSI or bar if you're working on a German car. And what that does is it pressurizes the cooling system, and with more pressure inside the system, it raises the boiling point of the coolant and the water. And so if you have a leak in the system and it's losing pressure, that means the boiling point for your cooling system is going to be lower. That means if you get your car up to 210, 220 degrees, it can boil over, and that can cause all kinds of more issues, blowing off hoses, expansion tanks cracking or exploding, like all kinds of stuff. These cooling systems are just made of plastic. So that's why I always put a really big precedent on having cooling systems tight, buttoned up, and pressure tested. I think it's really important. If it's a slow oil leak, I can top it off. You know, I can keep a case of oil in the trunk, stop off every fuel fill up, you know, throw a half a quart into the thing, and I'm good. But you can't really stop at a gas station and open up your expansion tank unless you want to sit there for 30 minutes or if you want to try to burn your hand. All right, big pull, let's go. Foot to the floor. 6,500 RPM. Guys, she hauls ass. I am putting this thing, I'm putting the hammer down on it, and she's pulling, and she's building boost really good. Holy cow, this thing's got torque. There we go, we got it. I beat the piss out of it and I got a half power icon. So the road test went good. We know that these turbos are building boost. I'm really curious to see what this check engine light is going to be for. It doesn't have the misfire like we did before on cylinder number 3, so we'll see what happens. We're here. We got the fuel pump plausibility fault and boost pressure too low. Let's check details on this. Delivery rate outside valid range. Okay, and again, boost pressure too low. I feel like we need to chase down this fuel pump fault because it has just been consistent with our drivability. Or we have been through this test plan before, but let's go ahead and give it another look and see if I missed anything. Next step, fuel pump is activated for 20 seconds, and again, we can hear it. So I ran the test plan and voltage at the pump was okay. Reached a pressure of 4.4 bar, which was sufficient, saying that the functional check was all good. Now before we move on from this, I want to take a look at the actual pump. The car came with these old parts as well. I think the previous owner went in and replaced the fuel pump. I'm not sure as to why. Maybe they were chasing down this fault. It's got these 410mm nuts that hold this plate down. Man, what's causing that fuel pump issue? It could also be that it was a cheaper fuel pump that was installed and the car just doesn't like it, because it's odd to keep getting that fuel pump plausibility fault. But let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you've had any experience with an issue similar to this. Have power already. Well, we had a good run there for a second, didn't we? Okay, last fault check of the day. We have that DME mixture control fault back. I mean, I wonder if we need to smoke this thing again. Fuel air mixture 2 lean P0171. We also have our fuel pump plausibility fault again, which if this thing is not supplying enough fuel, that would cause a lean code, right? And then we also have our turbocharger boost pressure too low. All these came up from that last highway pull on that last drive. I'm really starting to find my momentum and rhythm in the shop again. My parents were in town for about a week and a half and we just finished rebuilding this beautiful front deck. If you guys missed that video and you're interested in carpentry or building at all, go ahead and check it out. I tried to impart as much knowledge that I learned as I could. We skinned out this pressure treated header with this beautiful rough sawn cedar. I also did all the posts, and then we did a full 7-foot by 12-foot deck with these beautiful cedar decking boards. I got them coated up with 3 coats of polyurethane, 1 coat on the posts, and we also built these beautiful stairs. We installed new pressure treated stairs with hangers. It was a lot of fun and I learned a lot, and this thing came out really beautiful. It's finally cured up now, so I get to use it. But yeah, if you guys missed that video, you might enjoy it. If that's something you're interested in, go check it out. I'll leave a link in the description for you. Come on, Sage. There she is. Those spark plugs are on their way from FCP Euro, and I'm going to start working on getting some other parts compiled for this car. I'd like to get that oil pan replaced. I'm going to buy a used oil pan off eBay, so I think I'm going to get that sourced. But other than like tearing into the turbos, doing the cooling system work, I really want to get this turbo and boost issue figured out first, because like I told you guys in the road test, I want to make sure that this car is building boost before I go investing a bunch of time, money, and labor into all these other components, because what's the point of having an oil pan that doesn't leak if the car doesn't build boost and it's going into limp mode every time you drive it? So I would love to hear your feedback. There are so many people out there that watch this channel that are so much more knowledgeable than me. If you do have any experience on the N54, please do share. I hope you guys enjoyed, or I hope you learned something new. She is really coming along. We've made a lot of progress, and I got a feeling that once we get these issues figured out, this car is going to be building boost no problem with the original turbos. And as always, folks, I will see you on my next day off. Cheers, everybody.